And this is the place to be online. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live digital debate special on FoxNews.com. I'm Harris Faulkner, along with Melissa Francis, Charles Payne, Meghan McCain, and Jesse Waters. We've just watched 4 GOP candidates square off in the first presidential debate of the night. So let's find out from everybody here at the table how it's going so far tonight. Your early thoughts.
You know, I saw candidates out there sort of struggling for their life. I mean, really trying hard to get out there and do something and make their presence known. You know, I like a lot of their tax plans. I have to be honest, like the people that are out there, they have some pretty aggressive reforms. They got into them a bit. I mean, you heard Mike Huckabee talking about the fact that he wants to replace income tax with this sales tax, which is a dramatic idea that could never happen, but it's interesting nonetheless because it raises the question, why do you tax work? I mean, you tax the things you want to discourage. You don't want to discourage people from working, so stop taxing work. It's an interesting talking point, at least.
Charles.
Yeah, and to that point, 2/3 of the GDP, and when we talk about an $18 trillion economy, 2/3 of that is consumer spending. So if somehow we could get that, the problem with VAT taxes historically, everywhere they've been in place, they've gone up. So they start out at 14%, and a few years later, they're 40%. But this is my assessment so far. I'm calling Christie the peacemaker, Huckabee the promise keeper, Santorum Americana man, and Jindal the slasher. Because he is slashing at everything and everybody, and he does not. He had the best line of the night when he said, "Chris, I'll give you a ribbon and a juice box for participation." He is coming out there, and he is ready to destroy. And I'm telling you, he is making a name for himself.
That was a mic drop moment.
Santorum the yeller for that scream we
You know what? I had to slash it down. I'm not sure. Obviously, we all thought Howard Dean, but you said they were fighting for their lives. I mean, Santorum really was fighting. I mean, that was.
Yeah, it was audible. Meghan, what are your first thoughts?
I liked Chris Christie going after Hillary. I think he made a good point. Unfortunately, you're only as good as what you're trending in on Twitter, and Rick Santorum screaming and Bobby Jindal with the juice box is probably going to be all over the internet. The problem with these debates is it's kind of like you're dating a really hot guy you're excited to go out with, but another guy is distracting you before you go on the next date. That's how I feel about this debate. I'm like, he's nice, but I'm waiting for the hot guy.
Baby, I've been married a long time. I don't know. I don't remember how that felt.
Well, I'm single. So I'm the person out there.
I'm jealous here. Anyway, take it away.
I don't know how to follow up on that one, Meghan. I thought Christie outclassed everybody, and I think Melissa was saying while we were watching it, thank God Christie was there, because if Christie hadn't been there, it might have been a little flat. I think Christie had a new haircut. It looked pretty slick to me. Thought it looked pretty nice. Okay. He pivoted pretty effectively. Every time he was attacked or any time the subject came up, he went after Hillary. He said, I'm going to prosecute Hillary. And he's trying to use his, legal background to do that. Now, he laughed off the Jindal attack. That was fine, but he clearly won. Jindal was in attack mode. He attacked everybody, including the moderator. I guess he's trying to be the conservative. He went after Huckabee, crushed Huckabee, actually. Really shut Huckabee down. Went after guys who weren't on the stage. He went after Cruz. He went after Rand Paul, the filibusters who get nothing done. He went after Jeb, so he was trying to make a name for himself. He's just not very physically impressive. When you look at him, he kind of looks like a raisin a little bit. He's just small and wrinkly and shrunken, and he just doesn't have an imposing, dynamic. Santorum, he seemed angry. He seemed like he was shouting a lot. He scared me. I grabbed Meghan when he shouted.
It was really loud.
But he was, pro-worker, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. And then Huckabee's so charming. How do you not like Huckabee? I just don't know if Huckabee had a moment to kind of propel him to the top tier.
Can we go back to taxes for just a second, Meghan? Because you said something, and ending on Huckabee made me remember this. He said, when have you ever met an American who could spend less or stop spending? I'm paraphrasing here. But when you talk about the sliding scale with their tax plans, I want you to dig deeper, if you can, in all of this, because we hear this idea of a flat tax, and we hear this idea of reform and it not being 1 million pages or whatever the heck it is now to file your taxes.
So he's talking about a very radical change. I mean, he's talking about
Huckabee
having some sort of a sales tax, a consumption tax for people instead of having an income tax. And people have always blanched
like a
when
VAT?
you said that.
What they have in Europe?
His is a little bit different, but it's almost the same thing. I mean, Ted Cruz and Rand Paul are the ones that are talking about a VAT tax for sure. And And they're talking about having a threshold under which if you made so little money, you wouldn't have to pay it at all. But this would be a fair and obvious way. The problem with it, though, is that it's one of those things that it's very easy for the government to raise. So they could say, whoa, we're low on revenue, let's jack it up another 5%. Also, it's introducing a brand new tax, a VAT tax, that we don't have here in this country right now. So giving the government a new tool to collect from me is terrifying.
I remember being out on the trail with Herman Cain about this time in the last cycle. And remember, he was in second or third place. He was kind of jockeying right there. I think Newt Gingrich was in first place at that time. Back in 2011. And we sat down, we talked about the 999 plan. And it was, I think, the middle 9 that had some problems. Whichever one stood for that miracle tax that they could kind of move up and down based on what we were spending.
Here's the problem. All the Republicans are going to be for lower taxes. So this is where the audience and the voter is going to have to grapple with this. I'm a supply sider. I believe in low taxes. But you don't have zero taxes, you can't run a government. So where's the threshold between 0 and the 90% that Bernie Sanders wants? And, you know, the Tax Foundation, for instance, they've scored some of these things. And they say Donald Trump, his plan would create over 5 million jobs, but we'd also have an extra $10 to $12 trillion in debt deficit. So where do we find a happy medium? And that's really the key. And who can articulate that to make me believe that my paycheck will go up, but the debt level or the country can still be satisfied?
Well, that's hard to believe when I think by the time we get to 20 trillion, we'll each owe 50,000 apiece for the 300 plus million. Plus, there'll be more of us by then. That's not that far in the future, but that's a really scary thought. Meghan, you were going to jump in with something earlier.
Oh, I was just going to say, can we all at least admit that we miss Lindsey Graham for entertainment value at the very least? I really missed him this evening. I also want to pick
I miss Pataki.
I don't miss Pataki at all. I actively forget he's running for president.
He might be outside, though. He might be, like, in the lobby. So
oh, come on.
He's sitting with a cup asking for quarters.
I'm like,
hey, well, this has just become available, and it'll give us a little bit of a look back. And I thought this was a funny moment because apparently nobody wanted to answer the question of which Democrat do you most like? I'm paraphrasing it, but that's pretty much what it was. Let's play a little bit of that, and then we'll talk about answering questions. And maybe we won't.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to set. No, that's okay. Let me know when you guys are ready with it. I saw a little ARF already, so I got excited.
What I would say there, and I think, this kind of goes to what Hillary was asked, who's your enemy? Hillary said it's the Republicans. Right. So are the Republicans going to come out and answer this question and say, I'm not friends with any Democrat? I don't know if you want to do that, but I think you kind of have to twist it around and say, which Democrat I really like, I'd work with? Donald Trump. Go after him. That's a smooth way of calling him a liberal, and I think you can get away with it. Try to be funny. But I mean, not answering the question, that's a lack of respect to the moderators.
I guess no one's going to answer the question. Like when whoever it was who said that about 30, since no one's answering the question, I'm going to talk about veterans. And I'm like, wait a second.
All right. Can you do that? We've got it. Let's watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to fire everybody in D.C. in both parties. I think we need term limits, get rid of them all, and make them live under the same rules they pass for the rest of us. Governor Huckabee?
Well, since we're not going to answer the question, let me just remind everybody, tomorrow is Veterans Day.
I'll continue in the pattern and just say this to everybody, since it seems to be an open question. I'll tell you the thing that disturbs me the most about what's going on with the Democratic Party in Washington, that they're not standing behind our police officers.
I'm going to answer two questions for the price of one. The infrastructure question, the answer is we need to get the federal government out of this infrastructure business.
All right. Well, you paraphrased it perfectly.
Yeah. I don't know how you get away with that. I mean, you're not supposed to be able to do that. They need to jump in there and tell them no. I mean, I don't know. I also think that, Chris Christie, boy, he was head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd during this debate.
Well, he specifically went after...
Stop it. You have to stop that.
He's
We're
tall.
talking about people's physicality. It's not fair, and I won't stand for it.
I'm a physical person.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's talk about... Let's talk about Governor Christie.
Per se. I think Christie was playing more toward a general election, and I think Jindal was playing for Iowa.
Right.
Yeah,
Jindal started to climb in Iowa.
Which is more important at this point?
For Jindal, Iowa. If he's got a place in the top three. I think Christie's more, probably he's been really working New Hampshire hard.
He's rising in New Hampshire right now, and that video went viral recently of him talking about
the drugs.
The drug addiction. It's very moving, and I actually think he's the one being in the undercard debate right now. I actually think he did.
Also, by dissing everyone, Jindal was going after that non-established, that establishment,
the outsider.
We all hate D.C. We all hate professional politicians.
That's hard though, because he's a politician.
I know, but he was going for it. He dissed every other politician on the planet on both sides of the aisle.
I'm going for it.
That's right.
I still can't serve an ace every time, or even ever. Let's watch a little bit of Governor Christie, though, going after, look, somebody across the aisle.
And the fact is that if you listen to Hillary Clinton, she's made it very clear. She believes that she can make decisions for you better than you can make them for yourself. She believes that Washington, D.C. should pick the winners and losers in our economy and in our life. If you think that Mike Huckabee won't be the kind of president who will cut back spending, or Chris Christie or John Kasich, wait till you see what Hillary Clinton will do to this country and how she will drown us in debt. She is the real adversary tonight, and we better stay focused as Republicans on her. I'll tell you what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what's going to happen to this country if we have another 4 years of Barack Obama's policies. And by the way, it'll be even worse, because Hillary Clinton is running so far to the left to try to catch up to her socialist opponent, Bernie Sanders, it's hard to even see her anymore.
All right, so after that, Mike was dropped on the floor. They had to bring in a new mic.
Exactly. I used to not be able, a really long time ago, I was really over Chris Christie, and all of a sudden, I'm falling back in love with him again. I really like his, I really am, because
love is in the air.
I know.
What?
Wow. I thought you didn't want to date anyone in this early debate.
I'm talking about
his guy.
Well, I'm still waiting for Donald Trump this evening. Let's keep it real. How many people tomorrow are going to be talking about tonight's debate, the undercard debate? Not a lot, for better or for worse. I'm just trying to keep it real here. Who do you think millennials care more about? That main stage debate. But I do think Chris Christie is actually showing me what kind of candidate I always wanted him to be, especially in New Hampshire. And I'm telling you, check out this viral video. It'll move you.
So what do you think, though, accounts for the fact that, yes, he's doing better in New Hampshire, but overall he's fourth in New Jersey?
Yeah.
In his home state. And people there are saying, by the way, I live in Jersey, full disclosure. People there, this place I know so well, are saying they want him to go back and do his job there. Is that code for something like... Yeah.
Christie had the bull by the horns, and he ruined it with the hug at the beach with Sandy. And then Bridgegate happened. Yeah. And Bridgegate totally annihilated him. He lost his mojo, and he doesn't tell people to shut up at town halls anymore. He doesn't go viral like
you think he needs to?
Do. People liked that about him. People liked that, he was kind of the Trump guy before Trump came around. And now he's this kind of rhino guy. The talk radio doesn't really like him that much. But he hasn't distinguished himself. And he distinguished himself a little bit at the last debate when he had who cares about fantasy football? Yeah. But then his poll numbers didn't show. But I like that he's going after Hillary. I think that's mature. He's trying to link Hillary to Obama. Hillary's so vulnerable. It's such a rich target.
But here's the only question that really counts for any of these guys. Did any one of them prove everybody wrong for putting them on the undercard? Do they get that step up, like Carly Fiorina went from the earlier to the later prime? Anybody?
I think Chris Christie has more of a place on the main stage than Rand Paul does at this point, legitimately.
All right, let's go and check with campaign Carl Cameron, who is live for us in Milwaukee. So we're doing a couple things here, and we're almost ready to toggle to the next one, Carl. Quick thoughts about the early debate, and then we'll move on.
Well, I heard what you were saying about Chris Christie, and in New Hampshire, Chris Christie is a factor. He has spent the majority of his time in New Hampshire. There's a New England Northeast kind of thing between New Jersey and New Hampshire, and he's doing pretty well. It's not like he's showing up in the polls yet, but it's really important to remember that we are only in the very, very early stages of this. Yes, they've been out campaigning in some cases for more than a year and a half, but no one's voted yet. That's going to be more than 80 days away from now. The national polls don't reflect what's happening in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and those three early states set the trajectory for the entire race. And generally speaking, whoever's leading now ain't going to be the winner in Iowa. There's usually a come-from-behind candidate who surges at the last minute, and you can look back at the history of Iowa and see that that's the case. Mm-hmm. And then whoever wins in Iowa generally gets their butts kicked in New Hampshire. Yeah. It's like the first primary folks want to say, hey, wait a minute, we want to put our own stamp on this, and we don't necessarily like what the folks out in Iowa do. And then you go to South Carolina, and often the New Hampshire decision is reversed. So all of these candidates who are talking about front-runner status, whether it's Trump and Carson battling for it or Rubio and Ted Cruz battling for third in the low teens, that's all well and good on the national stage, but it isn't what translates to the voters who actually cast the first ballots and set the trajectory of the actual race. This is the equivalent of flag football, not even a rough game of touch football. When contact sports begins is when the voting starts, and it's going to be very fast, and it's an entirely different game.
Now you're getting physical like Jesse Waters.
We haven't we haven't had attack ads hitting on the air yet. There's been a few. There's occasionally some web ads.
Rubio today, and PACs who were supporting Marco Rubio hitting back a little bit today. But you're right, it's very early for that.
It's really early. They're still introducing themselves. One of the reasons why the candidates have been so frustrated with the preceding debates has been that they haven't been able to introduce themselves. They've had to essentially defend what seemed to them to be media attacks on their bios and their past, and not talk about what they want to do for the country's future. The FBN debate with Chris Christie put in the second tier tonight. He dominated. He was doing much more talking. He seemed much more at ease. He was staring into the camera. He was ready for attacks. Bobby Jindal came after him, called him a big government Republican. That's the kind of stuff that Chris Christie absolutely loves. If you punch him if you kick him in the shins, you don't bring he's the kind of guy who brings a gun to a knife fight. Chris Christie loves to mix it up. So
I live in Jersey. You make us sound like we're just, come on.
We shouldn't be surprised by any of this stuff.
By the way, I have a boardwalk in my town.
Well, there you go.
But I haven't yelled at anybody on it recently. You know what? We have a little bit of the Senator Rubio ad on Jeb Bush, because that's really where the sparring's been. Can we take a dip in, Carl? Will you hang out with us for a couple minutes?
Absolutely. Go for it.
All right, let's watch a little bit of that, and we'll talk more.
What Marco has, I think, is something that the Republican Party needs to have, which is a hopeful, optimistic message based on our principles. I'm a huge Marco fan.
He's probably the most articulate conservative on the scene today, and the fortitude to be a good president.
So proud of his high voltage energy. I'm so proud of his enthusiasm. I'm so proud of his eloquence.
I'm a huge Marco fan.
I'm Marco Rubio, and I approved of this message.
All right, so wait. So you're saying genius. Carl, Melissa Francis is calling this genius. Why?
Well, because this is a continuation of what Marco Rubio did to Jeb Bush in the last debate. When Bush began to suggest that Marco was wrong on X, Y, and Z and inexperienced and ill-prepared, the junior senator from Florida turned around to his mentor and said, the only reason you're saying that is because a bunch of consultants have told you to do that because we're running for the same office. It makes Jeb look disingenuous and resorting to bare-knuckle politics against a guy who ultimately he knows is capable. So it is brilliant in that regard. It essentially neuters any attack that Jeb might make on Rubio tonight for anybody who sees that video. And it's not the only time we're going to see it. This is going to be an ongoing theme. Every time Jeb Bush tries to criticize Marco, Marco's going to remind him that makes him a flip-flopper.
Yeah. I mean, how do you punch someone and look charming and decent and a good person while you're doing it? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anyone pull that off before. I mean, he hit him right back with his own words. It was like, come on, buddy, you remember, we're actually friends. I remember when you liked me. Listen. I mean, it was incredible. What a great ad. And it almost has to make him pause and think in the future about doing it again.
Jeb Bush has more miles and years on him than Marco Rubio, and that may be some sort of a stature advantage. But in order for him to play it, he's going to have to get around the fact that he's been out of office for about 15 years, and that again, going back to the early states, not talking about national polls and what's going on in terms of the television-consuming audience, but what the actual voters in the early states are saying, Marco Rubio's got a buzz, and Jeb Bush does not. No. In New Hampshire particularly, where both Marco and Jeb are spending more time, in the case of Jeb Bush, a lot of the old Bush loyalists from elections past, and New Hampshire is certainly not a state that's been favorable to the Bushes in the past, but there are Bush loyalists there, and they are showing signs of real disappointment in Jeb's performance and siding with others. John Kasich has a bunch of former Bushies in his campaign. The Christie campaign has a bunch of Bushies in their campaign. And those are sort of staffers and perennial primary players that Jeb Bush ought to have and doesn't.
Carl, you're talking about the staffers, and I want to ask you about the backers, the guys with the deep money, because apparently, Jeb came in with over $100 million, but he had a big lineup of money to come, and apparently a lot of them are looking very closely at Rubio. And let's face it, Donald Trump's attacking Rubio, Jeb's attacking Rubio, and Hillary's attacking Rubio. That means Rubio has something that everyone's afraid of.
There is a great game of whack-a-mole going on here. Anybody who gets traction who's not Donald Trump or Ben Carson, the Democrats immediately hammer. The Democrats leave Ben Carson and Donald Trump alone because they think Donald Trump and Ben Carson would be great for them to run against Hillary. When they play whack-a-mole on these other so-called establishment candidates, because the Democrats see them as the types of candidates with the types of policies that could actually give Hillary some headaches, it's not going to stop. And how does Jeb Bush come back from that? He has to make the case that Marco Rubio, and they've said this already, that Marco Rubio is this year's Barack Obama, that he is a freshman senator who came into office eyeing the White House, who tried to make a play on immigration that didn't work out and abandoned his own sort of namesake policy, and is now casting himself as a transitional figure and the next generation of American Republican politics. It's almost a carbon copy of the kind of things that Barack Obama was saying when he was running against Hillary Clinton. How ironic that what Barack Obama used to take down Hillary Clinton, the dynastic candidate in 2008, is very similar to what Marco Rubio is using to take down the dynastic candidate in Jeb Bush in 2016.
Okay, first of all, hi, Campaign Carl. I feel like you're such a good integral part of every moment in American politics. I just want to ask you, do you think if Jeb Bush doesn't do well tonight that this might be the final nail in the coffin for him? I don't. I think that this is only the fourth debate. There will be 12. So it raises the question as to why Scott Walker got out when there was only 1/6 of the debates that had taken place when he bailed. It would be very self-defeating to get out when you've only done a third of the debates, the introduction part where you get to compare your policies to others. And let's be honest, 2 of the first 4 debates, we'll see what happens tonight, but the last one and the one before that were roundly criticized for a marathon that went too long and was berating of the candidates, and the criticism of the liberal bias and the gotcha questions that came in the last one.
Carl, quick question for you. So Rubio is probably going to come under attack by 2 to 3, maybe even 4 people on the stage tonight.
Yep,
and
he's got momentum.
He's going to be the lightning rod. Now, he's a great counterpuncher, extremely well prepared. We saw him knock Bush out just in milliseconds the last time. And he did it with grace. He kind of criticized him, then kind of rose above it and got out of the mud pretty quickly. Now, if he's attacked by 3 or 4 guys, is he going to be able to sustain that kind of energy and that kind of counterpunching? Or because the ceiling is very high for him, but if he does not have a good moment, all that good nature and all that wind at his sails, that just comes out if he has a bad night, loses all momentum. So big risk tonight for Marco. Would you agree?
Very, very high expectations. High expectations that they have desperately been trying to tamp down. From the morning after the last debate, Marco Rubio was saying, look, there's going to be a lot of debates. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm just getting settled. It's like, nothing to see here, folks. Keep on moving. Nothing to see here, because he doesn't want to be the center of attention in November. So the center of attention is perfect at the end of January when the voting starts in February. He's trying desperately to go low-key. Now, if he gets tripped up, then there's a problem. And he is going to face a little bit of the pig pile syndrome here, because everybody knows that he is hot right now, particularly in Iowa and New Hampshire. Yeah. So being the center of attention gives him a unique opportunity to do something, and we've seen him do this before. He says, look, when I ran for the Senate, the entire Republican establishment in Washington was against me, and only Jim DeMint, the Tea Party sort of patriarch of 2010, was the only guy who gave me a shot. Everybody was against me, and I won that Senate seat anyway. Folks will remember that Charlie Crist was who he was running against, a Republican who quit the party and then ran as a Democrat. He was an outsider, an anti-establishment then. He came into the Senate. His immigration bill kind of blew up on him. The House wouldn't pass it, even though it was going to pass in the Senate. And he retrenched. But he still remains with one of the most conservative voting records in the Senate. Right. And lest we forget, he was the original Tea Party victor.
Yeah, interesting. Just on Rubio for another second here, you talk about how he's being compared with Barack Obama, then candidate Barack Obama. One of the things, though, that Obama was criticized for was he was too young. I mean, is Marco Rubio going to face that? And what does he do?
He's 44 years old. He has a very optimistic, articulate, and aspirational speech, but most voters tend to be a little bit older, particularly in the early Republican voting states. It's up around the 65-year-old age, and this is something that he has to regularly deal with. And he's accustomed to it. He's a very eloquent speaker. He can get a lot of articulate policy speech into both a zinger at his rivals and in self-defense, and he can do it with a smile on his face. He's a very, very talented politician, but he is young, and he is comparatively inexperienced to somebody like Kasich, who's been around in the Congress as well as a governor, balanced the budget, et cetera. But Ted Cruz is a freshman senator. Rick Santorum's a former senator. You can go down the list.
Yeah.
He can compete, but he's going to have to overcome the fact that the Republicans will say that he's a carbon copy on the right of what Barack Obama was on the left. That's Jeb Bush's strategy, and we'll see whether it resonates or not.
Interesting. Real quickly before we let you get back to what you do so well, Carl, is anybody talking about Rick Santorum's yelling? Because it is trending. and I mean, I know I hear people joking about, they're laughing about it. It's trending on Twitter right now. It was an interesting moment because it was on the line of, is he angry? Is he just trying to outshout everybody in the room? I mean, what kind of strategy was it? That sort of thing. What are you hearing?
Santorum has always been a blue-collar Republican with an eye toward a populist hand up for those who need it most. It's a position that he adopted in the latter days of the Iowa caucuses in 2012 in an attempt to sort of undermine Mitt Romney as the rich guy who was out of touch. Rick Santorum won the last Iowa caucuses. He's the reigning president of those caucuses right now. And so when he gets angry, when he gets passionate, it confuses voters. They may really agree with what he's saying.
It confused Twitter.
But he seems angry when he says it. And you know, for anybody who can get animated, and reporters can sometimes get animated, I can relate to this. Sometimes when you knit your brow and you're trying to make a point, it looks like you're mad, when really what you're trying to do is make a point and you're not mad at all. All you got to do is get those lines off the forehead and the scowl gone. Rick Santorum's never mastered that, but there is no denying that he is a very, very passionate conservative with a populist bent that gives him the opportunity to say, look, I'm going to not forget the little guy, and sometimes our party does do that.
All right, Campaign Carl Cameron. We're all chomping at the bit to ask you more questions, but I'm being told you have to go to work. Off the screen right here, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good to see you. All right, before we look ahead to tonight, Fox News has confirmed it's learned that Texas Senator Ted Cruz will post his government reform plan with sweeping spending reductions at 8:30 Eastern this evening. So what time is it right now?
Very close to
Oh, it's like 3.5 minutes away. Okay. Shortly before taking the stage at tonight's primetime debate. Extended details can be found shortly on National Review Online and then on the senator's website. Your thoughts?
This is a brilliant move. It is classic Ted Cruz. Everybody has put out their tax plans. If you are hardcore about economic growth, you understand anything about money, you know that when we say we're going to cut people's taxes, how are you going to pay for that? What are you going to do? Government has to shrink at the same time, and we have to spend less, or else that deficit that we are always talking about gets bigger and bigger and bigger. My question, I mean, all of us at Fox Business submitted questions of what we thought should be asked. I said, you know, outline for me, give me your first 3 steps and how you're going to cut spending. How are you going to reform entitlements? What are you going to do about this huge spending problem that our government has? Ted Cruz is going ahead and doing that. He's outlining in detail online while the debate's going on what he's going to do, and he can talk about a few of those points and then say, look, I've got a plan. It's all in detail. Go look at it. I'm going to cut the spending and the waste.
I would be curious to know if there's a short list of programs per candidate. Like, that can't be hard to do, right? The things that you would redline right away.
Well, yeah, but this there might be a short list, but this is a gigantic problem. So,
yeah. Well, it's
I think
first
a lot
step in 1,000 steps, I suppose.
No.
Well, I mean, if you're Rick Perry, you just eliminate 3 departments and forget one of them.
No,
but I think most of them are going to say something like Department of Education, which is very, very popular. Those type of things. A lot of these departments and these agencies are just so bloated. It's absolutely amazing in the bureaucracy. And what I do like, to Melissa's point, Ted Cruz is a very meticulous person. When he puts this stuff out, it really makes a lot of sense. So it's a great move on his part. This is what we want, because the fact of the matter is we didn't get the nuances necessarily, some of the details I think that we thought we would get in this first debate. Now, we hope that we will in the second debate.
You didn't think so? I thought it was pretty detailed.
You know, I think on the tax side, but some of the other things, like Christie gave us something on foreign policy with respect to flying Air Force One over.
If you're Hillary Clinton, you felt detailed by Chris Christie.
But what I'm trying to say, though, is we won't get the kind of details that we're going to get when you can go online and read this as you watched it.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And that's going to really work.
And so it's smart for him to do this just like he did in Boulder, Colorado.
Absolutely.
Put out his tax plan. Real quickly, how is this debate going to be decidedly different from what we've seen? Let's watch a little bit from Neil Cavuto. All right, so they are going to, and now I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Yeah.
I think what I need to do, see, they got it. So what I need to do is take a little bit more of I need to put some shoulder into that
real pregnant pause,
and go, and now, Cavuto.
If you go back in history and look at some of the best debates, the moderators weren't even around to be the issue. It was their questions that triggered the memorable lines. It was a question to Dan Quayle whether his relative inexperience could prepare him for the presidency that prompted the famous John Kennedy comparison, to which Lloyd Benson responded famously, "You're no Jack Kennedy."
Yeah.
It was a question to Ronald Reagan about whether he was too old to be president that prompted that famous answer, "I'm not going to hold my opponent's youth and relative lack of experience against him." That was all prompted by a moderator asking a question and the candidate famously reacting.
All right, one more. We want to go now to hear from one of our favorite political analysts here, Charles Krauthammer. He says the stakes are particularly high for one GOP candidate in particular. Watch.
In the end, this debate is all about one thing, Jeb Bush. He's had 3 bad debates, one more, and he's not going to drop out of the race, but he'll really be dead man walking. He's got to show a spark, and that means a moment. Look, the entire season has become sort of theatrical. The ones who've risen are the ones who've had the moments. Carly had the moment, Rubio had, Cruz has had, and Bush has been very passive and unimpressive. That doesn't mean he is, but that's how he appears, and that's why his numbers are low. So I think all the pressure is on him, which is going to make it all the more difficult. But that is the story going in. It might be the story going out.
First thing, I love a man in a bow tie.
I
mean, I don't know what he said.
A tuxedo?
Well, I don't know, but it was wonderful. But I did write this down because I thought this was important. And it kind of goes with what Carl Cameron said a little while ago. He said, remember, there are more than 80 days from people actually voting on anybody in a primary season. So this is still very early. We've seen recent polling that's come out, 70 to 72% of people say it's way too early to make up their minds. But you heard what Charles just said. He called it theatrical.
Yeah.
We are now glued to the drama of this. But is there substance? Is there room for substance and learning and all of that?
Well, there's definitely room for it.
For better or for worse, you're only as good as your last tweet and your last soundbite. I love that we're talking about Ted Cruz releasing his tax plan on the internet, and we expect everyone to go online and read it. Average Americans just trying to get through the day, they want to know things in sound bites. For better or for worse, I don't like this part of the political process, but this is where we're at. I really trust Campaign Carl. He obviously knows exactly what he's doing, and he's brilliant. But I do think if Jeb Bush doesn't come tonight and look alive and look interested and look excited, I agree he's dead man walking.
Did I hear that right, though, when Charles Krauthammer said that Bush has been classy and that's hurt him? Did I hear that right? Like the whole thing is so theatrical?
But I see his point. His point is like you can't just kind of sit back and wait for it to come.
He's been the opposite of theatrical.
So this is not this is not Marquis the Queensberry old boxing rules. This is Marquis de Sade. All right, every man for himself.
Oh my goodness!
Go ahead. I mean, really, that's essentially what we're talking about. Take off the gloves, and if you try to be a gentleman, or you try to do this the old-fashioned way.
It's not what Republicans want. Everyone's angry. Everyone's upset. Everyone's sick of the Obama administration in the last 7.5 years of what this country has turned into. I'm angry. I want to see him look as angry as I am, so I agree with that.
I also think it's what you said before about the short attention span, about how Americans have other things going on. We can't focus on this many candidates for this long. I mean, people at first thought it was really entertaining that there was this huge field of people, that they were mixing it up. There were some oddballs. There were some unexpected people. You had some of the old crowd. You got some new people. I mean, there was a flavor for everyone out there. Now we've been watching this show for a little while. We're a bit into the season. We're going, okay, you know what? It's time to get a little bit more serious. We need to whittle this down a bit. There are too many characters out on the screen. I've got to cut it down. And so they're looking to kind of just trim the hedges. And I think that's what people are saying.
Jeb doesn't have a warrior spirit.
Yeah.
I think his father was a patrician. He was a kind of a blue blood, a little hands-off, and that was the old days. And I think Trump's made people step up their game. Yeah. He's a pugilist. He comes out, performs, he takes shots, he cracks jokes, he talks with his hand, he's flamboyant, and people respond to that. It goes viral. I just don't know, because they've been saying this for months. That Jeb, this is do or die. This is the debate he needs to turn it on.
He's got too much
I've
money.
heard that for the last 3 debates. I just don't know if it's in his DNA to be that guy, and I haven't seen it yet so far. I don't see how tonight he's going to all of a
Donald
sudden
Trump
transform
is a
himself.
quintessential New Yorker. Like when I first started on Wall Street, the biggest broker at my firm reminds me of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Bombastic. He walked in the room. He commanded the room. He talked the same way. Quick quips. They deal with people. They negotiate. They ask for big money.
Yeah.
They're not afraid. When you have people who deal with billions and millions, they're not afraid of anything. If you can ask someone for like $1 billion, nothing scares you. And that's what you get from Trump.
Everybody in New York remembers the fact that he went in and he turned around that ice skating rink.
Right.
I mean, there was this piece of gold in the middle of Central Park. I mean, Central Park is this sacred place in New York. You can't buy it, and they had this ice skating rink that's failing because the government's an idiot and they can't run anything. I mean, you could give them gold and they would turn it into just sawdust. And he came in, he just turned it right around.
That sounds like the opposite of a Disney movie. All right, real quickly. Donald Trump, of course, is what we're saying here, never shies away from a fight. He says he's ready for anyone planning to come at him tonight. Watch.
Everyone's telegraphing they're coming after you with all, guns blazing and a lot of money in negative ads. How are you going to counter that?
Well, if they do, I go after them times 10. I mean, that's what the deal is. And, there's no reason for me. I think for the Republicans, that's a very bad thing for the Republican Party. But if they do, I come after them times 10. And that's the way the game is played, I guess.
Wow.
He's honed these skills in the boardroom of The Apprentice. This is this guy, he got his chops for 10 years at ABC slicing people's kneecaps on television. And that's what you have to do at the debate. You have to get these quick cut downs, bloody someone up, and move on and do it with a little smirk. And he's mastered that. He's a master media mogul. Everybody's trying to copy his style now. He owns the room. He moguls up with his nice tie. He comes in on the jet. Melania's walking down the stairs.
That's the Secret Service's nickname for him, Mogul.
Yeah, Mogul. I thought it was Humble. Wasn't it Humble?
No, that's what he suggested.
It's Mogul.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Secret Service. Mogul on the move.
Mogul on the move.
Yeah.
Don't give it away. There are a lot of people.
Actually, it's not technically a secret.
It's not a secret anymore? All right, good.
No, but
well, it's not now, but I don't think it was before I said
I
it.
think we got to ask how Ben Carson's going to do tonight, too, because I actually think what you're saying, politics is a blood sport, and the thing I've been disappointed with Ben Carson this week is you got to suit up. Like, this is the major leagues. You are running for the highest office in the world.
You don't think
to
he's
be our
doing
leader.
well, Carson?
I think his reaction to people vetting him, which debatably how he's vetted, listen, it comes with the territory. The liberal media is going to go for the jugular every single time, but you have to suit up and armor up, and he seems so shocked.
One of the things that people like about him is that he's not a politician.
Right.
He's an outsider. He wouldn't know how to do
I
that.
don't know if it will last. For me, I liked how polite he was for a long time.
So here's my question. I always think it's a great indicator of how somebody's going to do when they haven't done something before, with whom they surround themselves.
Yeah.
So does he have a bunch of Jesse Waters in the room?
Yeah.
That will just take you down by the tie, down, does he have that, or does he have more people like himself?
Does Carson?
Yeah, that would be my question.
I mean, I've seen him walking around the building. He doesn't seem like he has Jesse Waters anywhere near him. I mean, actually, I did see you guys in the same room, in the O'Reilly green room. You guys were in there at the same time.
I've never seen him in the same
I don't know
place,
if you
same
remember
time,
that.
so-
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I don't know if, does he have staff? Does he have guys?
And
He
I've
has a
met some of them in
campaign
this building,
manager.
absolutely.
And he has one or two consultants, but I don't think this guy's staffed up. I
No,
don't
but
think he's
they're
got
very busy
boots on the
after last
ground
week,
in
that's
some
for
of these early voting
But
precincts.
if you've seen a spokesperson on television, or the woman that I saw that was speaking for him, and I think is his official spokesperson, she was like him. I mean, she was cool, and she was quiet, and she was charming. And this thing where he was, quiet but sincere, silent but brilliant, this was his whole vibe. And now we're seeing that vibe tested by this controversy.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't know if it works in this kind of setting, but I think we're going to see tonight.
He wasn't that calm during his press conference. I mean, he was still, I wouldn't say combative, because I don't think he can be combative. I was surprised he was surprised he's being vetted. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think he was surprised he's being vetted, but honestly, if you
He's
went to my
definitely
neighborhood
surprised
and asked
he's
people
being
I grew up with 40 years ago, what did Charles do? Half are dead, 20 moved,
I'm not
20%
saying
moved
it's
away.
right.
I'm just saying it's dumb. I'm just saying, you know what, I think, first of all, I think he won. He raised $4 million, 2 polls out since then.
In
Mammoth
no time.
poll, he rocketed up. He's ahead of Trump now in South Carolina in this Mammoth poll that was from November 4th to November 8th.
Can I
he
ask you
rocketed
a
up in
question
another
really quick
poll.
then? Do you think he can go up against Hillary Clinton? Do you think that? And
Absolutely.
I'm asking this.
I think, honestly,
Wait,
easy.
Just
easy.
let me
but
preface
one point I was
this really
gonna-
quickly. Let me
okay.
just preface it really quickly. The calm, concise, lovable Ben Carson, you think in a primetime debate, him against Hillary Clinton, you think this is what Americans want?
I think so. Absolutely. This is what I was going to say earlier, too. I was cut off. When I grew up in Harlem, I wasn't afraid of the Donald Trumps, the big mouth guys. They always got their ass whipped. I was afraid of the quiet guys. Okay? I think if you think that his kindness or being a gentleman, these days somehow that's become a bad thing. This guy's a thinker. I mean, that controversy for a guy who had the highest SAT in 20 years?
I would never question a neurosurgeon's intelligence ever. I think he's a brilliant man.
All right. Well, you know what I would love right now? Let's hear from Ben Carson.
It ain't my
He was
kind of
on with
politics,
Bill
I guess.
O'Reilly, and he says he hopes to get a lot of questions about the economy. Why?
You and I went around and around on the flat tax thing, and I told you that I didn't think 15% was realistic because you can't pay down the $20 trillion debt at that level. I said I thought you would have to rise it up above 22 into the low 20s on a flat tax basis. But that's policy. I mean, you respect that, right?
I very much, and of course we didn't get a chance to talk about some very significant cuts that will go into the program as well.
Like, give us it tonight.
Like, for instance, we have 4.1 million federal employees. We're not going to replace them as thousands of them retire. We have 645 government agencies and sub-agencies. We can cut at least 1% out of each one of those in terms of fat without any problem whatsoever.
That's I think what we've been looking for, specific cuts to government programs. And I was surprised because if you look at Ben Carson's economic plans on the internet, there's not a lot of meat on that bone. But that was the first time I actually saw him say, let's get rid of some of these workers, let's get rid of the fat. But to your point, Carson was right, and there was righteous indignation there when he was being attacked unfairly by the press, but he's got to expect that, and he needs to steady the ship tonight. There's a little bit of waves rocking the ship. I think he needs to consolidate it and go past what he's been talking about with his biography drama. I think he needs to put that to rest and move forward, and I think everybody will be happy about that.
Do you think people will bring it up on stage?
I think it'll be brought up, and I think he needs to put it to bed and move on.
Yeah, I agree.
The problem with his solution, though, on the money front, though, is that even if you cut 1% from every agency, that's a tiny drop in the bucket of what needs to happen. What you have to do is attack entitlements. That is the only way to get spending under control. You have to go after Medicare, Medicaid,
and
Social
unfortunately,
Security.
to your point,
can I ask a question?
To your point, nobody wants to do that. Chris Christie was the only one who came out early on and talked about a higher age.
Rand Paul.
Yeah, but even Donald Trump, who says, "Listen, I'm going to be the fiscal conservative here," says we can't touch this.
Well, that's because seniors vote more than anybody out there.
We know why.
So
we know why. But to Melissa's point, though, it's all of this is a moot point if we care so much about the deficit and we're afraid that at some point we'll be paying $1 trillion a year on the interest. Where does the money come from to educate our kids?
Well, Huckabee actually said it in a kind of compassionate way. He said the people that are poor or the people that are old and sick, they will get those entitlements. But for the young and the healthy, we need to change that because obviously bankrupt.
Right. And honestly, we do. It's the third rail of politics.
Yeah.
But
we need to move on so we can get more in here tonight. I know, Jesse, you wanted to talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton and a reaction that she's had. Yeah. We have that. Let's watch it together. Or do you want to set it up? It's up to you.
You can set it up fine. I mean, this is Hillary, huge gaffe. I think this is a real
you think this is gonna
big
hurt her?
Foot in the mouth for her. Do you remember when Donald Trump was asked a question by a member of some town hall, and he got killed for not challenging this guy for saying Obama was Muslim or something? Well, there's a similar situation with Hillary.
Okay, let's watch it.
Every time I see her on TV, I want to reach through and strangle her. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but...
I wouldn't mess with you.
All right, so let's just be clear on who's waging a war on women.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay? I mean, any woman in a room that would allow that to be said and not have anything other than laughter come back needs to be asked the question of why.
I couldn't say it better myself, Harris. You hit the nail on the head. Hillary's supposed to be a progressive feminist who's out there fighting for women. And given an opportunity to step back and take a breath and separate herself from this kind of angry, rude comment, which was in jest, but kind of nasty.
It should have been an
She should have said something like, no, that's not nice, and move on.
Not only that,
and the media, when Trump didn't interject himself and
jumped
correct,
all over him.
He got killed. I'd like to see when the press is going to go after Hillary.
Specifically, the issue that she falls on.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being
That's
a
her
woman.
wheelhouse.
How are you an outsider? I'm a woman. I mean, she plays that card like it's going to get a discount at TJ Maxx.
Yeah, but
Not only that, she's the one. She jumped all over Trump as well and said, well, he should have the seasoning to understand that even, it's up to you. When Trump said, is it up to me to correct someone when I'm at a rally and they ask a question and I can't even hear it? Why is it my responsibility? And she came back and she was on camera and she said, it is that you have to stand up, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she was the one who came out and said Trump should have said something then. She's in the exact same situation.
Wonder what she'll
I can't
do.
wait to see how it plays.
Can I just say something really quick, too? I am exhausted with the attacks on Carly Fiorina between The View and Hillary Clinton, all this stuff. She is an extremely formidable candidate. She's the only conservative woman on stage right now, and she is treated so disrespectfully by the people in the media. And above anything else that's happened in this election, this is what I'm most grossed out by.
All right, so here's my question for you with Carly Fiorina. Why hasn't she changed the subject? Okay.
From her.
And I think that's a fair question because, look, she got a little bit of traction last week on the whole View thing. They got a whole lot. They were looking for a bank on ratings.
They were.
Okay, that's what they were looking for. They didn't care if they'd hurt her feelings or not hurt her feelings. They just wanted to move on. She handled it like a boss.
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, you're talking about that instead of the issues that would set her apart.
She talked about being pro-life and was attacked for being pro-life.
Well, that wouldn't be the venue to do it.
Well, but they asked. I support her going on The View. I understand why she wanted to react.
I understand.
I'm just saying she is trying to move the narrative. I think it's difficult.
So what helps her do that now?
Tonight, she's got to come gunning just like everybody else. And I know you think that Ben Carson playing it quiet is the right way to do it, but I think do what she did in the first debate.
I think there's a difference between being soft-spoken and being quiet, and that's just it. I just think that just because someone is loud doesn't mean that they always have something smart to say, and I think that's where the media circus thing that Krautheimer was talking about comes into play, the theatrical part of this. I think Ben Carson has been saying a lot of great things, and quite frankly, maybe it's the media's fault because Carly clearly won that second debate in my mind, and somewhere along the line, the momentum was lost. That baton fell to the ground.
I think she could pick it up tonight because if there's one thing she's great at, it's numbers, it's details. She can do it fast. She can do it very decisively. She can do it persuasively. This is the perfect opportunity for her, especially as someone who's done conference calls, who understands earnings, who understands money, for her to come out and hit really hard. Boom, boom,
I think the problem, Melissa, is what happens after she wins these debates. Because she won the first baby debate.
She didn't capitalize.
That's why I don't understand what's going on. When she's clearly won. She won the first debate. I think she won both debates.
I don't think she has the money, and I don't think she has the infrastructure, the media savvy. But go ahead.
Let's take a look at a little of the Real Clear Politics polling because we are now ticking down. We're less than 13 minutes away from the next debate. So now it's time to kind of build, and I want everybody to kind of be on the same page. And notice in this RCP, Real Clear Politics, this is a national poll. And what I like about this poll is that it's an average, obviously. Yeah. So we kind of get to see an aggregate, and look at how close this is. And even when you get beyond Carson and Trump, which decidedly have almost 50% of the entire lot here, give or take a few percentage points in an up or down, Rubio there, Cruz right there. What are your thoughts about how this is stacked up?
Well, you can see right now Rubio and Cruz have really performed well over the last 2 weeks. They were stuck at around 3, 4, 5% for as long as I can remember. And then within the last couple of weeks, they've really skyrocketed to the top of the stage. Now, Trump and Carson have been battling, and that's been going on for a long time. I'm not sure how strong Carson's support is. I still think it's a little soft. Trump really needs to separate himself from Carson tonight. This is his wheelhouse. The economy's, everybody says he'd do the best on the economy. I'd like to see Donald maybe put a little distance between himself and Carson tonight.
And how does he do that?
I think it's kind of a trap because when you attack Carson and you do it in a personal way, because remember, Trump has never attacked Carson face to face. He does it with the hammer jokes and the NyQuil when he's on the stump or on the interviews. But to do it face to face, Carson is such a likable guy and he's such a darling and he's just so gentle and impressive. I just feel like that could kind of crack back at Trump and he'd lose respect. So I think he needs to do it very delicately and stick to the substance and say, Ben, I'd love the guy to operate on me, but the guy doesn't know one thing about creating jobs.
Actually, he said in the past he knows friends who think that he's not a very good doctor, so I don't think he'd say that. I mean, it's been interesting because you say do it in a way that he doesn't lose respect. Trump has been hitting him anyway. It just doesn't always feel like it. It's not like when he hits some of the others.
I want to see these guys forget about hitting each other. I do want to hear some substance. And I know this is Carson's weakness. I interviewed Ben Carson, and he was happy to talk about the Fed and things like that. But it's on-the-job training for him. And he's a brilliant guy, but you can see those wheels turning all the time, and you can feel you can see everything moving around. Okay, what? Because even earlier, I think in the last 24 hours, he made a comment about the trade agreement that a lot of people said, huh? Yeah. So, he's got some things he's going to have to work on. And, I don't even know that. I don't even think that anyone needs to hit him. I think the moderators will throw a question at him and just let him see if he can answer it. Because I think he's going to have a hard time tonight.
They're going to have to get really policy specific tonight. This is not the CNBC debate. These are actually trained professionals that know what they're doing. Maria Bartiromo has moderated more than one presidential debate in the past, and I agree with you. I think when they get really, really policy specific, it might not be the strongest.
Can I just tell you what I want to see?
One second. We're going to go to Rubio going after Trump to get a little flavor because we're counting down, and then I'll come back to you, Charles. Let's watch.
I'm not sure someone who's like Donald Trump that's taken 4 companies into bankruptcy should be lecturing anyone about finances. I think what he's referring to is the credit card statements from my time as the leader of the Republican Party House campaigns. We've released those, and they show that what I've always said, and that is the overwhelming majority of the expenses on that card that was secured under my personal credit were for political uses, and any time there was a personal expense, I paid for it. The party never did. This is an issue we dealt with back in 2010 when Charlie Crist tried to raise it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Marco Rubio and the preview that Carl Cameron gave us that he could be taking incoming from all sides. That's got to be exhausting to even think about. I know a lot of people are on Twitter right now, Facebook. We're going to check our devices right now and include you guys in the conversation. Real quickly, Linda Borneman says, I think that's how you say her last name, kudos to tonight's moderators. Excellent, substantive, relevant, and interesting, refreshing. People are liking the idea that this had a focus. And going forward, you've got some tweets, too.
I got a ton of tweets. I did my own informal, who won the debate, and Melissa was right overwhelmingly. They're saying Chris Christie. Number 2 is Jindal. Number 3, FBN and the moderators. Wow. and then Huckabee and Santorum.
Wow, that's hurtful though. If you're well, it's a non-scientific poll, but you don't want to become like. How do you get to be in 5th place if there are only 4 guys on stage? But anyway, go ahead.
Some interesting thoughts about here. Why is everything about giving the federal government all the power? Why isn't it going back to states and local government?
Great point.
I mean,
great point. By the way, that's Obama's whole thing. Everyone talks about the crux of Obama's belief system is that states should have no rights. It's all about states' rights.
And then it becomes all about him, just making decisions.
Exactly.
He doesn't even believe that Congress should have any power. He wants to all take it up to a higher level. So, and it even goes back to that minimum wage debate. I mean, that was one of the things that's raging right now in the cities near the debate that's going on right now is this idea to push the minimum wage higher. And you have to take a step back from the debate and say to yourself, wait a second, why are they even setting the minimum wage on a federal level? Rents aren't the same in New York and D.C. and
That's
Arkansas.
an excellent point.
Why are we even talking about a federal minimum wage? And you forget this context that we're just handing over all this power to the feds, and it.
All right, so as we were prepping to come down here, the first debate hadn't started. I sent you guys out a note because I was watching local news here in New York in my office. I live in Jersey, so sometimes I don't always watch local New York. And I watched this live. New York Governor Cuomo announcing that he is raising the hourly wage of thousands of state workers to $15 an hour. And he would have set for municipalities a larger amount of workers than any place else in the country. And then you kind of turn to what you say. Well, what does it mean if that spreads to the private sector? What is that?
Well,
what is
even
it?
within
Can
New York
employers
State,
can they do it?
It means a small business owner in a part of New York State that's suffering probably will have to fire 2 of the 3 workers or 2 of the 5 workers and never go in business.
To stay competitive with what's out there as salaries now.
Well, the cost is just ridiculous. And what people don't understand is it hurts the poorest of people because most poor households have 2 or 3 wage earners. This definitely loses jobs. So if you have 3 people in your house making about minimum wage, and you get 2 of them get a raise, but one of them loses their job, guess what net just happened to your house?
Yeah, that's not a net zero. That's a negative loss.
Right.
Not only that, the people who can least afford this is the individual business owner. I mean, you think about that guy on the corner that has 1 bodega, who has the sandwich shop. I mean, somebody like McDonald's, yeah, okay, if you press their hand, maybe they can afford it, or maybe they will, like Panera.
Some are running tight, too. I mean, their profit margins aren't like Google.
There's one component, though, in all of this, and that's the human element. And one thing is for sure, when you start to set wages, the way that I understand it, my family had barbecue rib restaurants. And so I grew up watching them kind of having to make ends meet with regard after my dad got out of the military, right? But the thing was, that was their dream after he got out of the military. And we all have this dream to do what we do. And so if the competition is a $15 an hour government job because the small business owner can't afford to give you what you can go earn over there, somewhere in the middle, the dream's lost. Because you're going to go for the money.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart. That's not what we're supposed to be doing as Americans. We're supposed to chase our dreams.
Listen, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
I should run. No, I'm kidding.
You can announce. It's not too late.
2016.
I'm running for queen of my house. No, go ahead.
No, it's good. I just have a lot of friends at home that always want me to. There are a lot of small business owners, girlfriends I went to high school with. I have a girlfriend that runs a very small salon, and things like this will ultimately hurt her. Obamacare, same thing. She had to fire people because she can't afford to pay health insurance for all employees. It always sounds really good. Whenever I talk to liberals about this, I'm like, I love the idea that I'm living in this utopian society and everything is free for everyone. But as Margaret Thatcher said, at some point, the problem with socialism is at some point you get rid of, you can't spend other people's money.
That's true. And I think everybody tonight on stage has to be very cognizant of, let's not just talk about 4% GDP growth productions. Let's not talk about carried interest and these revitalization zones to bring money. How does it relate to the kitchen table issues?
Yeah.
I want to hear people talk about college loans or gas prices or grocery prices or car payments. You have to make it relatable, because if you talk in this macro sense, no one really can digest that except you guys that know about this stuff.
I agree with that.
Make it resonate with the average guy.
I also think you've really got to focus on small business, because that is the average guy. Because the economy in the United States has changed. I mean, there aren't these jobs that you work at for 40 years, you get a pension, you're in the same town. That's not it anymore. And if you are working at McDonald's, or you are a student who has a loan, or if you're sitting at home and you're unemployed right now, your best hope is your own business, going out and doing something for yourself. Yeah, but and those
I agree 1,000%. In fact, I think that's the crux right now. American exceptionalism and making us believe, because everyone up there is going to tell us about the superlatives about themselves.
Yeah.
Tell me about me. How can I be like you? How can I be like you, Mr. Trump? And I think that gets back to it. On Friday, I was happy to see 300,000 people come back into the job market. Now we got millions and more. Yeah. Last year, we hit the lowest level of entrepreneurship in the history of this country.
That's really scary.
That's what happened yesterday. A painting was sold for $170 million. Guess who bought it? A Chinese guy that used to drive a taxi cab.
Yeah.
These are the American exceptionalism stories that used to be unique to America. We need to rekindle that. If someone can get me to believe that tonight, and over the course of this campaign, they got my vote.
But I think Donald Trump is getting a lot of people to believe that right now. I mean, I think he thinks his business experience and him being a big executive, a lot of people are really responding to that.
I think Trump.
Talk a little bit about there, and one thing that I would like to see tonight is not hear the line, "I'm the only one on the stage who can."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to hear
Please
that.
don't let me hear that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where their weaknesses are, though, and where you kind of see the tender spots. I mean, Donald Trump, I know Marco Rubio hit him on, well, you've had a bunch of bankruptcies. Trump's comeback is, yeah, but I was just working the system. You don't know what you're doing with your finances.
Well, I mean, that's a very good line of attack. But I think when Trump says that, he goes, well, your dad lent you $1 million. And, you know, a lot of people struggle with credit card debt. And by the way, you went bankrupt. Now, I know he didn't really go bankrupt. The businesses did. But that really gets under Trump's skin. Nothing makes him more angry than having to explain and defend that, and it puts him on the defensive. So I don't really know if he wants to do that and associate yourself with a mainstream media line of attack. I feel like that's small ball, and Trump does that sometimes. You know, he forwards the Politico attack, and you know, he trying to gloms on to the mainstream media attacks.
Media master,
and he's good at that, and that's fine, but you don't want to overdo it too much. So I think there's danger in attacking.
I'm sorry, but I love that Marco Rubio has problems paying. I'm sorry, I'm not amazing with my credit cards either all the time.
Surprise,
but it's something I found very relatable about him, in all honesty, and him talking about student loans. There are things about that when I was like, even this 44-year-old senator has problems. I think it's very relatable. I actually don't think it's the hindrance that a lot of people are saying.
Carly Fiorina on HP.
You know, that's one of those things. So the truth is, I mean, I covered it at the time, and the person that was so upset that said he wanted to strangle her was a former employee who had been laid off, I think.
Okay, that's even worse, because that actually could be communicating a threat that could be... Like, really? I didn't know that.
He's getting strangled again? I mean, can we just go...
Anyway, I didn't mean to cut in.
No, it's true. So I do think that actually HP is a huge vulnerability for her. She did not, I mean, she was at best sort of a C-plus CEO of that company, but
wasn't the
one
company a mess?
understands that. And it was a huge mess when she left. I mean, I think from a business standpoint, I don't think she did a great job at HP.
That, though,
I don't think anyone
every
cares or
tech company got crushed right at that same time. In fact, Microsoft has been going up every year for the last 4 or 5 years. It's still not back to its old high. So It was. I mean, listen, that deal she made with the
Not good.
what was the deal she
And
made?
the people she managed, it was compact.
Compact.
And
that was
the
a
people
terrible
that
deal.
She managed hated her, and she laid on.
And then
But
Trump
she blamed that on the woman thing, though. I don't know if it's true.
And then Trump comes in, and he's different from Romney because Romney was this like vulture capitalist, and no one knew where the money came from.
He apologized.
No one could
He
understand. He was
apologized.
defensive about
Romney,
it.
If Romney would have went and said,
He
"Listen,
didn't embrace
I
it.
staffed the first Staples. Me
Yeah.
and my boys went and restocked the shelves."
Right, and here's a Staples employee. He's
and by the
buddy.
way, if you count every Staples in Chicago, I created more jobs in Chicago than
But
Obama
he didn't
ever
do
did
it.
in his
Right.
life.
And then, but Trump actually has buildings. Trump
Okay,
has
guys.
golf courses,
Trump said,
buildings. I mean, he could
I'm
point
rich
to it
and
and
you
say,
love it.
You
And
know what
there
time
it
it is. You know what time it is. It is now 30 seconds away from us saying goodbye, okay? You guys have set this up.
Can't wait.
We're going to pop some corn, and we'll
we
all
do
be on.
shots too, right?
We'll all be on all of our social media. So hit us up on our Facebook and Twitter handles. I know they've been putting that up on the screen throughout all of this. We're 15 seconds away. That's going to do it for us. We'll be right back here at 11 p.m. Eastern with more live debate analysis. Fox Business. Go there.